Welcome to the C45 Association's official YouTube channel. The following presentation is brought to you with support from Sigma Analytical Services with the C45 Association. Sigma Analytical is the only cannabis lab with cross-continental operations in the world and the first cannabis-focused GMP certified lab in Canada. Our service goes beyond a full panel of testing and also covers stability studies, cleaning validation, formulation and product development support, and more. We have been a front runner in testing Cannabis 2.0 products and have validated methods for vape cartridges and a variety of edibles, topicals, and beverages. Sigma is also Shoppers Drug Mart's partner in medical cannabis by Shoppers and Ecolab's exclusive partner in Canada and South America to run cleaning validation studies for cannabis processors and producers. Our short and dependable turnaround times, in addition to accurate and reliable results and outstanding client support, has made Sigma the preferred lab for many LPs. Sigma also offers support on consulting projects for the producers and labs in Canada, Colombia, the US, and beyond. From method development, validation, and transfer, to support for designing, setting up, and running in-house or independent cannabis labs. For any questions or to start a discussion on how we can assist you, please don't hesitate to contact us. We hope you enjoy the following presentation, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more quality content.
Well, hello and welcome to our HempFest panel discussion about facility design and facility design optimization. We've got some great guests here today. We've got Gord Nichol, who's owner of North 40 Cannabis Limited, with us today. We've got Michael Athill, COO of HRVSTR.ca, and we've got Hadi Feltham, who is the CEO of Square Foot Grow Systems Incorporated and Vice President of Business Development at Pure Life Carbon. So it's quite an all-star panel here today with people with a lot of cumulative experience in facilities and designs and operating cannabis businesses. And I'm really looking forward to tapping you guys' brains on this topic. So if it's all right with everyone, I'll start clockwise and get an introduction from Gord first. And if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about North 40, and about your background in facility management.
Hi, I'm Gord Nichol, owner and master grower at North 40 Cannabis. We're a small micro cultivation and processing facility up in northeastern Saskatchewan. We custom built our facility. We started ground up and built this facility and designed it to use our aeroponics grow systems, and that's kind of where I've got into the facility design on a large scale like this.
Great. Michael.
Hi there. Yes, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me specifically. So my name is Michael Athill. I am the COO and co-founder of HRVSTR Cannabis. We are a craft cultivator here in Ontario. We recently received our license October 9th of last year. And our primary focus is just bringing the fire to the market because we have amazing genetics and we want to really bring it to everybody for their consumption. So thanks for having us once again.
Great. And Hadi.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having me on board and on this panel here today. And it's great to work with everybody that's here. From CEO of Square Foot Grow Systems, Inc., I have been working in the cannabis industry for the last 4 years in helping design, build indoor cannabis facilities for large producers, micro producers, specializing in the procurement of equipment and product dealing with sustainability. And that's where I came across Pure Life Carbon Inc. and their grow media and started developing and integrating that into the systems because it's currently the only carbon negative grow media that you can use as a standalone within the market. So helping contribute with that sustainability that we're looking at moving forward in the cannabis industry. So pleasure to be here and I look forward to the conversation. I think it's going to be a fun afternoon.
Great. All right, thanks everybody. And my name is David Descheneau. I'm the CEO of Alpine Craft Cannabis and Intergalactic Cannabis in Edmonton, both startups, both pre-micro licensed. And my focus is on vertical sea of green and lean workflows and facility efficiency. So I'm really excited about this talk, and I'm really interested in what some other professionals in the space have to say. Now, in a sort of thinking about this topic, about optimization especially, a few sort of themes seem to come up, and that is that, for people that are building a facility or designing a micro cultivation or a standard cultivation business plan for the first time, there are a lot of moving pieces, and you don't necessarily get the opportunity to think holistically, to think about things like operating cost and efficiency, environmental sustainability, ergonomics for the workers all at once if you don't have a lot of experience in the field. So for the people in the panel here who have been through all of this, I'm hoping that some ideas might come up about how it's not necessarily the sort of top-down reductive process that a lot of people think it is, like bedrooms and flower rooms and workspaces, and growing the dankest dank and the most of it, and then just seeing how a facility might work in that way. But my thoughts sometimes turn instead to continuous improvement and environmental sustainability and efficiency, because no company can guarantee that they're growing fire on their first crop. It's not necessarily something that you should pin all of your hopes on. So in that case, a lot of the time, designing efficiency and low operating costs, low production costs per gram can buy you time and can give you some time to work into your facility, figure out its quirks and idiosyncrasies. So I think that everybody in the panel here is probably working from that more sort of bottom up perspective, start from fundamentals. And so maybe Hadi, do you have anything that you'd like to comment on in terms of how these things integrate into one design rather than just that reductive approach piece by piece?
Yeah, it's having that holistic perspective is so important, and a little change can make a huge difference in these facilities. We have to understand that, when you take a room and you design it and you have an expectation, say for 500 plants, and then you stick 700 plants in there, it has an impact on the environment. So addressing everything from the beginning to the end, and really taking a look at it from an efficiency perspective. But a lot of people have already built out their facilities, so it's not too late to continue to add those efficiencies. We see a lot of people that are monitoring their environments, but they're not necessarily correlating how their environments are operating with the energy consumption that they have, and how little tweaks and changes to their operations and efficiencies can save them thousands of dollars on an annual basis. We had one company that was able to save enough money that they could buy new chillers for their chiller plant because of the way that it was operating. So when you take a look at a $120,000 piece of equipment and you're burning that much excess energy on an annual basis because it's not set up properly or optimized, it has a massive impact on your bottom line. So you're right, you have to incorporate everything in there and take a look at it. And I'm sure that the gentlemen here have had some challenges as they set up and are getting integrated into their rooms, because you may grow for 40 years, but that room that you've grown in or the environment that you've grown in is going to be a little bit different no matter where you go. The square footage is slightly different. Your ceiling heights will be different. Your table to the lights, the type of lights that you use may be different. You may go from a hand watering system to a fully irrigated system and managed. And all those things have an impact on the way that you're going to process that facility, and working with your design team so that it delivers to the expectation that you're looking for. There are restrictions that you have to take a look at while you're doing things, just because mechanical equipment isn't free flowing. It doesn't just turn on a dime, and neither does power. For instance, when you take a look at your first facility, don't rush out and get a piece of property, start building it out, and then ask the power company if they have enough supply for you, because it can take months, if not years, just on that aspect of your facility to build out.
Yeah, great points. Now, Michael, as I understand it, Harvester looks at some, so sort of alternative designs like vertical and wall-based growing, and some, different approaches to facility utilization and efficiency. How does that play into, the sort of holistic design and the general concept of what you're trying to bring forward?
Absolutely. Well, I think going just from the very beginning, when we started on this journey, we decided to ourselves, we're going to look at the health and safety of two things. First and foremost, the employees, the people who are going to be working here, and as well as the plants. Because Without either of those, it's going to be very difficult to achieve what we want to achieve. So the health and safety of both have everything to do with what we're going for. That was incorporated into every single design that we had, and we had numerous different designs that we were playing around with. So yes, I'm glad you did mention growing on the walls. We actually are on gutters in the walls that is allowing us to have smaller plant sizes, but with a really large yield, right? So that's going to allow us to do exactly what our plan was, to have top nugs all the way through and have, for lack of a better term, very aesthetic looking nugs when we go to the market.
Right. Yeah. Bag appeal. So I'm really glad you bring up the employees and plants in the same sentence in terms of safety and working conditions and growing conditions. As I see it, they are all in one. And what I think that is a mistake that I've seen sometimes, people coming from the legacy market, is trying to fit as much growing as they possibly can into a space without a lot of regard for the ergonomics and the health and safety of the workers. And essentially, I mean, whether the people that are there are going to want to come to work or not within certain working conditions, like very narrow aisles or very unkempt plants that are scratching them, giving them allergies and hives. This all sort of goes into facility design very much, because when you're setting up that floor plan, you have to visualize the workflows that are going to happen in the facility and how that's going to impact people. Gord, as a producer that's been operating for some time with a pretty stellar reputation in the space, what has your experience told you from where you started with your original facility design and how that evolved to now, based on these sort of health and safety and workflows and efficiency within the facility? Can you comment on that at all? Have you had to sort of run with that?
Yes, we had a pretty good start on things here. We were pretty thoughtful on our design of our grow rooms. We managed to match up our drying room really nicely. Those two rooms worked really nicely, but we were challenged somewhat on our layout for our mother room. That got pretty tight pretty fast. And since then, we've been able to change things around a bit and get it better working flow through the facility. But until you get in there and you get working, sometimes it can be a bit of a blind alley that we have to work through.
So another thing I was wondering is, in the cannabis industry, we are starting to see some sort of carryovers from manufacturing and other operational designs and operational standards. Have any of you incorporated any of these sort of general frameworks like lean manufacturing or ISO 9000 standards or Six Sigma into your facilities? Do any of those formal design patterns, play a role in any of your designs?
We've done a little bit of try to follow lean manufacturing by not handling things twice and make the most use of our manpower. I come from a fabrication and background, so we got a little bit of experience that has helped us guide us through that, but nothing formal in place. We're learning as we go. It's all new to us, not all of it, but the side of the packaging and pre-rolls and stuff like that is we see lots of opportunity to get leaner and faster and more efficient in that area.
Likewise, we haven't really done anything formally, but we've always leaned on ideas and looked at them as a resource, but nothing that has been formally introduced into the facility.
I have several clients that are working through those processes and have attempted the inevitable switch from regular good manufacturing practice to the EU GMP manufacturing practices, which a lot of the larger growers are going towards. And I have to tell you, if you're going to ever think about building a facility and you are considering medical and shipping overseas, plan that initially in your facility. And if you have an existing facility and you're looking to convert it into an EU GMP, don't turn around, go and buy a new facility and start over again, because the cost of retrofitting into that type of environment is extremely high, and you'd be better off starting another facility. Once you do it from scratch, it's not a huge increase in price. There is some additional design that you have to go through, and there's additional processes that you have to look at. But from an overall cost and expense, it's not that much more, but it is when you do a retrofit. So I do caution anybody who's looking after those certifications or wanting to hit a certain plateau, really work that into your design phase, because it really implements the second you walk through the front door, the second that your product arrives, any product arrives in your facility until it leaves. So that mapping is extremely important.
Okay. So if you wouldn't mind commenting a little bit further, Hadi, in broad strokes, what are the differences between a EU GMP facility when you're looking from that very beginning scratch build?
It's a lot about the equipment and the processing of that equipment and how it works within your environment, and what the impact would be to your environment. So traditionally, for myself, if I'm looking at a facility that's going to go that direction, we make sure all the mechanical equipment is outside of the rooms, ensuring that we have proper airflow through different systems rather than mounted fans on the wall, because that can become an issue of cleaning. Risk of contamination is really the biggest stressors within those in comparison. Now, good manufacturing practices also have these guidelines, but where it goes a little bit further in EU GMP is that you may have to install a stainless steel duct work for air circulation rather than a traditional piece of ductwork. Your coving will have to go to like a minimum 8 inches up your wall rather than a 2 or 4 inch coving that you would find. So those little tips and tricks, rounding corners in order to be able to have your employees be able to clean a little bit faster and a little bit easier, are all little things that can help you get that compliance. And then it's really, again, documentation on that side of things as well. So from the facility design, what's really important is that you work with your SOP development as well to make sure that you are working the workflows and that it's very consistent with what your operations are. I've seen a lot of companies that have written SOPs, they built a facility, and then the SOPs didn't fit into the facility. And you can't do that with EU GMP. It has to be bang on.
Yes, I can definitely speak to that as well, because we are GMP compliant, and I think that has to be had if you're going to get your license, I believe, in the first place. So, with that being said, your SOPs have to marry up with that exactly, and if they don't, you're going to get dinged no matter what. It's an absolute must.
I should clarify, SOP, in case somebody doesn't know it, there is a standard operating procedures that you run, and that was my fault. I said it too, so it's all right. That standard operating procedures is your, and I lack of a better term, I'm not religious in any form, but it's your Bible. To your facility. And it will guide your principles within your employees' actions on a daily basis and how you monitor and track everything that's happening in that facility as well. So, it's extremely important everybody be up to date with it. If you have a seed to sale tracking software, there's a lot of them now, like Avora and some of the other ones, Element, that have that guideline that you can actually click on it. So if any of your workers don't know what's happening, they can pull up an SOP and they can sign off that they've gone through the training once they understand what they're doing, and it gives you that tracking documentation as well. So that's important, again, incorporating your bandwidth of your facility. So 150 megabytes or a 70 megabyte up and down load in your facility probably isn't going to be enough in order to be able to operate a robust CRM tool and fertigation system. So again, another little piece to think about while you're doing your design.
I completely agree with that. We're dealing with a lot of we're looking at various tool seed to sale software right now. So we're looking at, we can integrate our SOP directly into that and understand that as the tracking goes along, the SOPs have to be checked off on at the same time. So it all has to be formulated, like you said, up and down, left and right, so that everybody can have a complete understanding and a checklist as to what has to happen at every single point of the interaction with each and every plant going forward.
So Gord, in operating a working farm, are you implementing seed to sale software and record tracking software? And Connected to that, how have your SOPs maybe changed over time? And do you consider that a living document, or do you feel fairly stable in that? Or do you feel like it will never be finished?
Well, for the seed to sale side of the question, yes, we use one. We are actually, I'm going to drop a bit of a plug here for A&L Labs. We're working with them on an Alcan system they've got going on, and they've asked us to be involved in the development of that system. So that's really working well. We had an outfit earlier that it just didn't work out. They were promised the world and were unable to deliver. So, but as for the SOPs and them being a living document, absolutely. You can plan how you're going to do every step of what you do, but it's a lot harder when, you actually, do more than just write it down. And we find that we're adjusting and making tweaks here and there and updating them and revising them. And it's a process, so it takes some time, and don't be discouraged by it, because I'm pretty sure that everybody has probably experienced this, especially new startups. People that haven't done this before will definitely be challenged.
So it's, interestingly, we seem to have strayed a little bit into the territory here of, the CRM software, the seed to sale software, record keeping, its connection to GMP and licensing. So maybe we run with that, because I consider that to be part of, the facility, and, designing your business and how it's going to operate within your facility is hand in hand with those kind of tools. So it seems like we all have I would say above average sort of familiarity with the IT side of your facility and your operations here. What role, how do you see those things operating holistically? Like, what role, for example, would informatics play? Like, as you're doing your record keeping, are any of those records that you're keeping going to be incorporated into, sort of metrics, so that you can understand a strain or a cultivar better, or chemovar, so that you can understand your own processes and try and find your efficiencies? Are any of you looking into, those sort of that aspect of the information piece?
Always. It's always about. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Hadi. My bad.
No. I'll let you go first this time.
I was just going to say. I was just going to say, absolutely. We are looking at every single piece of data point that we can to improve from one lot to the next. So we have both handwritten notes, and we also have analytics that are collected from our automated system that shows us temperature, CO2, humidity, whatever it may be. And from there, we can, VPD is the biggest one that we typically look at. And from there, we kind of amalgamate everything into one and determine whether or not we've made the right decision going forward, or do we have to take 2 steps back. And just like an SOP document, it's a living document, right? It's a living plant. We need to make sure that we are doing the best we can to make sure we maximize the potential out of each and every strain. And being a smaller cultivator, we're not going to have like a bunch of different strains at one time. We'll have probably 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 at a time. And from there, we can really dial in and dial up or dial down, but really importantly, dial in exactly what we're looking at and get the most out of each and every cultivar.
If I can ask, and this is a loaded question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you correlate that data that you get from the room environment and the plant health with your energy consumption?
Absolutely. So that's a great question, actually. So I know you mentioned chillers earlier, right? So for example, we can look at the temperature of the water and say, okay, you know what? Maybe this is maybe this is a little too cold, or maybe we need to cool it down a little bit based on certain other changes that are happening and accordingly, right? So all that is correlated to the humidity, to the temperature, whatever it may be. That's all correlated back to the energy savings that we can have. Because as we all know, running into this industry, hydro is like one of the number 1 costs that we have to deal with, right? And last time I talked to you, Gord, that was one of the biggest things that you're dealing with as well. So, it definitely ties right back to our energy savings at the same time. But let me just come in with one last point. Energy savings are secondary to our to the quality of our end product, but at the same time, we still look at that as a factor.
Well, and it identifies your return on investment at a true rate of return on investment, right? So a lot of companies that I deal with, we go into different systems and they're not monitoring how that's operating on a regular basis. So, we went into one facility and I mentioned this the other day when we were having our discussion, that we identified that when power outages would happen or something would happen, their chillers would go to a default setting rather than go back into sequence. And for them, it appeared that the operation of the room was going fine because they were hitting their environmental parameters, but they didn't understand what was happening in the back end. So when we tapped into that system and started grabbing that information with GrowFit Analytics, we were able to then correlate the data from, oh, wait a minute, your chillers are now, you have one chiller that's running at 100% capacity 100% of the time. And it's been doing this for the last 4 months. And that's when the last power outage was. So by not sequencing that equipment properly, you've spent an additional $200,000 over this time frame just to manage that chiller plant. So why don't we take a look at it? And we had to do some balancing, making sure that they were sequenced properly and bring all that equipment, but we didn't lose any environmental efficiency. What we did was gained on the energy efficiency side of things. So now their next crop, instead of costing X amount of dollars per gram, they had a 70% reduction because that was their energy reduction on that crop. Right. Now put that in your back pocket and you have a future with your industry. Whereas if somebody is out there and they're just running power in order to be able to hit a demand and they don't know what that return on investment is, and this is a part of your SOPs, it's a part of identifying how your system's operating. It's a living, breathing thing, as every one of those plants in your rooms are, and you have to be conscious of that. And that's why when we take a look at some of these facility design, we correlate it into these ERP and monitoring systems. It's very different when you're dealing in a greenhouse or you're dealing in indoor environments, because there's additional things that you need to incorporate, especially the outdoor environments when you're not in a sealed room. So different growers are going to have different perspectives, and there is no one, put this in a box, this is how it's going to work. Every room is slightly different. So, tying everything together, and I'm happy to hear that you are conscious of your energy and how it's working, because I would say probably 80% of the growers that I walk into today and they're wondering what's happening with their systems have no idea what's happening on the energy side. They get a bill in at the end of the month, they pay the bill and they walk away. So congratulations on that. That's helping with the sustainability side of things. So continue down that path. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for
that. Any other comments? Maybe Gord, on any discoveries you've made during operations on areas that you were able to improve efficiency or change any of your operating systems? Is that something that you try and keep an eye on?
Yeah, it's definitely something we want to keep an eye on. On an earlier discussion, I had mentioned to Hadi I'd really like to have his team come in and do an analysis. I'm sure that there are potential savings that could be found. When we're running 7 grow rooms with 112 lights and 2,150 square feet, that's going to tax systems, and we grow here at minus 40 and plus 30 and everything in between, and rain, snow, sleet. Even though we're indoor, it all affects everything that we do here. So energy maximization is definitely something that we're going to be looking at as we grow and hone in our systems.
Yeah, well put. So maybe it's we can think a little bit more along those lines, and talking about in the space right now with the price compression on what's coming out, and more cultivators coming online all the time, and hopefully all of those operators becoming more efficient all the time, so becoming more competitive in the space, more competitive with each other. There are also a multiplicity of business plans that people are investigating in order to find their niche. And they involve everything from the regulatory side, from the provincial monopolies, or wanting to deal with them or not wanting to deal with them, the medical chain and companies like Shelter Market. The folds into other questions about your facility and your operations, like how many strains are you going to run? What's your focus going to be? Everybody would love to say my focus is the highest possible quality and the highest possible amount, but realistically, you may actually want to adjust some of those levers sometimes and find what your niche is, and exploit the cultivars that you have rather than the imaginary ones that you hope you'll be able to hunt sometime in the future. So would anybody like to speak to how some of their facility designs have changed based on the sort of plan on where a client wants to sell and where they're going to fit in on that quality scale or on that many or fewer strains for a limited sized facility, for example? Does that elicit any comments from anyone? Like, do facility designs change and does optimization change based on the business plan?
I definitely say that it does, for sure. But Hadi, I'll let you go ahead first. Go ahead.
Yeah, in our experience, it changes for everybody, and every individual is different. So, but it's kind of interesting. In the last 4.5 years, there have been a lot of different concepts and ideas brought to the table, but they're all very similar at the same time. So there may be little tweaks and changes that you're doing based on your environment, based on where you're growing, how you're growing. Like Lower Mainland, Southwestern Ontario, I can get away with a different envelope of a building than I can if I'm in Northern Saskatchewan or Northern Alberta. Our environments are completely different, so that has to be taken into consideration. The goal of the product, if you're looking, I've got some guys that have state-of-the-art facilities and can't grow quality bud, and I don't know how else to help them out, because from an efficiency, from a production and what the facility is designed to do, should be hitting all its marks, but there's challenges internally. So you can have the best and not create the best, and you can have facilities where I have walked in and went, wow, I don't know why Health Canada approved this, but I'll let them do that. And they've got some of the best fire coming out of there. So I'm done looking at the facility to say what the quality is going to be that comes out of it, rather than the individual.
Good point.
Yep, absolutely. Just to touch on that a little bit, I guess. I think a lot of it has to do with the individual, but the building obviously does have a dramatic effect. We've made a couple of changes over our short period of time that I think have kind of, the term I'm looking for would be change the way that we wanted the plant to be viewed at the end of the process. So, like I said, we're growing small. We're growing aesthetically speaking with nice fat nugs at the end, because we know that's what a lot of people want to see. And we had to make a couple changes accordingly. But at the same time, it didn't really change the philosophy in the end, right? It didn't really change too much of what we wanted to do. It's just like Hadi said, tweaks here and there just to make sure that we can meet our goals of what we want to do. Because not everybody has the same goal. Some people just want to sell bulk. Some people want to sell B2B. Some people want to sell B2C. And that changes the way that you want to approach different things as well, right? So there's a lot of variations to how you can do the same thing. It's just how are you going to do it, right?
Now, in the near future, or hopefully, we may see some new business models being able to emerge, and jurisdictions where farm gate gets brought in, where we may be able to have an impact as a community on policy, maybe lobby government to change some of the provincial wholesale models that would allow us to work, especially as small producers. Small producers tend to be more concerned with these issues, to be able to get their product direct to market and actually have a relationship with their customers, rather than selling, either wholesale and losing all branding opportunity, or if they retain branding, to be able to get into a provincial monopoly that's going to distribute their product sort of willy-nilly across a province, rather than allowing them to actually work with a local dispensary, or work with a regional distributor, so that they can bring in that local and that community piece. Now, assuming that we can make progress on that, and assuming that some of this moves forward and we get things like Farmgate in the future, how is that going to impact the design and operation of your facilities? Because it changes the business numbers a little bit. If you can get a higher price per gram, you might be able to run more strains, and you might look at capturing a certain market and retaining them, because they can come to your company for a variety of strains, for a variety of situations and purposes. How do you see your companies, do you see your designs changing in the future when these kind of new opportunities come in when the retail portion sort of opens up?
Farmgate is an interesting concept. I like it. I think it will benefit people. Ourselves, it's probably not a likely thing to really help us, because we do literally live at the end of the road in Saskatchewan, and we a little too far out for much traffic up this way. But some of the other folks could benefit from that. I think we really have to look at the barriers that small operators are faced with trying to get into markets. Big one is the $15 million of recall insurance to get into Ontario. That's a tough one, and perhaps some changes on the excise tax plan is always something that would help the smaller players get into the game. But I'll kind of hand it off to the other guys here to hear their thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's a great model, and I mean it works for wineries and Okanagan tours and stuff like that. That why not for cannabis? It kind of brings in, again, your facility being the whole property, being the whole business design is very much now impacted by you pursuing that new market opportunity.
Just to touch on that a little bit as well, and Gord, that was really well said. I think the main thing that we're trying to achieve, the main thing that a lot of micros don't have the ability to achieve is an emotional connection with the end consumer. As you had mentioned earlier, David, it's one of those things where we would love to be able to have a one-to-one relationship, but unfortunately we can't for the various provisions that are out there due to regulatory things with government. But if Farmgate does come to fruition for us, we do have our eyes on that. It would change our approach to our facility dramatically. Where we are right now, it doesn't really allow for a retail space, but we would have to, as Hadi had said earlier, just get a new facility, figure out something that would allow us to have that one-to-one connection, and move from there. We would take our learnings from here, and it would be another moving document or a live document that will allow us to take all of the learnings that we have from here, SOPs, plants, whatever it may be, and then provide that connection and allow us to provide a connection with the customer in the long run, right? And I think that is something that a lot of micros are looking towards, because I think that's where they can really see the benefit of Farmgate for micros.
As I was saying, I've been working on different models of Farmgate for the last little while, and I really like to present it to the government as an option, because I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for us as cultivators and for teams to get together and create a district or an area, especially in small communities. And you talk about rural areas. There's a lot of illicit growers that are currently active in those areas. There's a lot of legal growers that are active in that area. And if we could find a way to build a facility that kind of incorporated everybody together, and my vision here, and feel free to steal this as other people have tried, is to create a 4, 5, 6 micro cultivators in a building. They all have their own environments. They all have their own rooms. They're all managing, and they all have their own bays. But then it goes to a centralized processor that can have the QA, QC officer help all the micros. You've got everybody in one spot. That person doesn't have to do a lot of traveling to get from place to place. The share of the QA officer is shared amongst the group in the micros. And then at the front, you can have a retail where you can service a lot more people, because one of the restrictions that we have as micros is that traditionally we don't do a lot of variety. So when we have our retail stores, we're from our perspective, we'd be offering a limited amount of product, and we would be bringing in other people's product as well. But if we can create that co-op where, again, these groups can get together and they can operate their own individual cultivation bay, and the processor could be a joint processor, or however that would work, and again, details need to be figured out as those groups come together, but it's all under one roof and they're working together. There are ways that we can separate those systems so we don't have the risks of cross-contaminations and infestations from one grow to another. There's ways that we can control those environments. When we take a look at it from a sustainability practice as well, it's huge. When we can centralize, several cultivators in one area, we can then produce an efficient cogen system which powers that system from behind the fence. We don't have to rely on electrical grid production, so reducing the cost of energy for our growers. There's just so many different ways that we can take a look at this, and I'm really excited about this industry and the development of it. I'd love to be able to set up an orchard in, I'm from Southwestern Ontario, so walking the apple orchards and stuff like that. Doing the same thing with the cannabis facility, where maybe you're walking through a hemp field and the cannabis is produced somewhere else, would be pretty amazing. But we have such an education that we can give to people, help take away that stigma, and then we can also work together as an industry to create that extremely highly beneficial product that we're all looking for. Because each one of us, as you mentioned, Gord, your new guy that you have on with you, he's a different guy. He's got a different perspective, and as growers working in a co-op, they can collaborate as well and bring the right product to the community that they're looking for.
Great points. I have this makes me think of a topic that I've been thinking on for some time here, and that's the idea that if I remember the stats correctly, the last time I looked into it, Alberta produces somewhere in the single digits or maybe mid-teens, somewhere in that range of its own fresh food production, like fresh vegetables and whatnot. It's almost all imported here, and it's almost all export of oil seeds and more common crops for field production. Have any of you ever looked into sort of the potential to couple the energy systems of, say, food production that would otherwise not be viable within a certain climate zone, but if it was done in or ornamental production or any other type of agriculture? Because typically our indoor sealed room cultivation, they generate a lot of energy that we have to then go to a lot of work to remove and dispose of. And that energy, it's very hard to make good use of that energy that we're sending away. But we have the simultaneous problem of not having a greenhouse viable within a certain latitude, with a certain amount of like a certain temperature needs or certain need to heat it with gas. Is this something that any of you are interested in or have put any thought into, and even in ways that it ties back possibly to that farm gate or that sort of cannabis tourism model? Partnering, in other words, with in that sort of condo fashion or something like that, with people that are growing something other than cannabis.
I think it's important for all agriculture to work together now, and there are so many different systems, and you could take a look at it a little bit differently as well. I mean, here's a Bitcoin guys out there. If you're building a Bitcoin facility, build a cannabis facility beside it. The amount of heat and waste heat that you have coming off of Bitcoin will actually power your cannabis production facility as well, and vice versa. Although you don't want to create heat to create heat, that's why the energy coming off the Bitcoin is a lot easier. But if you have power facilities, oil and gas companies, I've been lobbying large oil and gas companies to create greenhouses off their cogen systems or off their production facilities because of the heat they have. And there's tremendous value to that. I think that, if you take a look at things like localized medicines, you take a thing like localized production of food for your health, it is localized product that actually has a major effect on things. So when we take a look at healthy living, I think the number one place in the world is an island in by Italy, and they're extremely healthy, but they eat pastas, they eat wheats, they eat all these different things, but it's because it's grown locally and it's actually for them that it's beneficial. We've done so many things to our products that it's no longer what it originally was, and regionally we're having these different allergies. And in southern Alberta, we get these the Chinook effect, so migraines and headaches. I'm sure that there's cultivars that grow fairly naturally here from a cannabis perspective that would actually help and have benefits to that. So doing that locally, providing that product to our consumers, and working again with food production or heavy energy users to create our facilities and partner together as we move forward only makes everything better. And again, that sustainable aspect of partnering and creating communities. There's now cities that are being developed that are a hub, and they are standalone from everything else that's happening else in the environment. We need to do that with food production and cannabis production, and localize things a lot more, in my opinion.
Yeah. Are any of you guys operating the condensers or the hot side of your air conditioning systems in an indoor space so that you can repurpose some of that energy and shelter the condensers? Because I have seen some designs working in that way, and I think it does improve energy efficiency. Is that a viable thing? And have you encountered any building code issues or HVAC engineers objecting to it? And maybe that even opens up a bigger question of what kind of pushback have you had by the traditional engineers and HVAC guys willing to put their stamp on or fill out their schedules? Do you find this to be an issue convincing anybody that energy efficiency matters and they can step outside of their comfort zone when you need those external approvals and permits?
Absolutely. So we do have the in-floor heating with the boiler and stuff, and we're looking at ways right now. I was actually spent the past week or so just doing a little bit of research on that and seeing how we can repurpose. Regarding the people or the HVAC guys who would come in and give us a little bit of flack for looking at these kind of things, say, are you wasting your time? Yes, we do have a little bit of that, but at the same time, I think they realize that we're trying to do things in a sustainable way and they have an open mind. So we've been lucky enough to deal with a lot of people who do have an open mind when it comes to sustainability and not just looking at doing things in a traditional way, but doing things in a way that makes sense for our company and our purpose, rather than just looking at it from, as mentioned before, the traditional aspect of things, right?
Yeah, and it is fun dealing with the engineers and the designers in order to be able to get them to understand what it is that your goals and then how you're trying to achieve them. But have the patience. One of the things that you have to do early is translate, and having a good translator that can communicate to your engineers and team that understand the grow cycle as well is extremely important, because when it comes to justification of what you're doing within your facility, most people will sign off on it if it makes sense and it doesn't break all the codes. So going to the in-floor heating or hydronic, where you've got a 4-loop glycol system that's running your condensing coils and all that sort of stuff, is important, because again, you can reduce it. I mean, we've got chillers now that are water-fired chillers that run on 2.5 amps of power. I mean, if you can take a chiller that runs on 80 to 90 kilovolts and then drop that down to under 40, there's a massive energy savings, and Yazaki's done a great job of bringing those out and making sure that they work in these environments, but it's tying all that equipment together. People like MCW, like engineering firms that have experience in this industry and have been doing this for a while, are more susceptible to being able to take those balance changes. Some of the guys out of, Deloitte and some of the teams that work there as well have become more open to the concept because they see the value behind it, and the world is turning this way. If we take a look at Europe right now, and one of the reasons I'm so excited about Pure Life Carbon is because Europe is banning peat moss and rock wool in their grow facilities, and they're making companies become more sustainable. You can't open up if you don't have your own energy consumption. They don't let you do certain things because they see the value in it. Just North America is anywhere from 5 to 20 years behind. But we can anticipate, especially with the changes that have happened in California, zero waste grow systems. I mean, those are all about sustainability and energy consumption and finding the best system. So engineers are now tuning into that a little bit more and are becoming easier. But 4 years ago, talk about a cogen behind the fence system, and they looked at you like you had 6 heads.
Yeah, it seems like an opportunity to differentiate yourself and have a competitive advantage in the market. And as we're looking forward to potentially the distribution regulations and the sort of federal and provincial systems allowing for more of that connection with the customer. I mean, it's easier for a small company in many ways to be agile on these type of things and to represent themselves with a principle of sustainability, zero waste, those kind of things, and leverage that. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to pursue those and pour costs into it if you never get to get your product direct into a consumer's hands with your label on it. So, it seems it's a bit of a pet peeve for me about how